to the Select Start Fantasy Football Podcast, Monday Night Football Edition, our first annual Monday Night Football Edition. We've got Coach Your Killer with us here. We've got Nye, that's being spelled backwards, with us here. We are minus Big Baller Ed, but he is here in spirit.
He is celebrating with Houdat Nation.
Yeah, I know, huh?
Right?
Yeah.
It's
too many cervezas after last night's win.
Oh yeah, that was a blowout. We'll definitely touch on that on our weekly show, which you guys will probably see Wednesday morning. First things first, we're here to talk about Pats versus Jets. Cam Newton leads them back on a game-winning drive. The kicker seals the deal. They win 30-27. Just for starters, guys, just some initial thoughts. Just on the game itself, aside from the fantasy implications. I'll start with you, Nye.
No, it was actually an entertaining game. The Jets, came in and they played a hard-fought game, and it almost looked like Adam Gase was kind of coaching for his job. He might be fired because they do have a bye week coming up. So, if you're a Jets fan, you're probably hoping, this is the time they pull the trigger on firing Adam Gase. But no, I thought the Jets played well. This team, has like a bunch of different personalities, and it really all depends on which quarterback is playing. It would have been nice to see Sam Darnold out there with the full complement of wide receivers they had going tonight. This is the first game where they had Denzel Mims, Rashard Perriman, Jamison Crowder all on the field together, along with the other guys. So that would have been interesting to see because we really haven't been able to see, Sam Darnold with the offense at its full capacity. He's banged up, didn't play tonight. So it was one of those things where, Joe Flacco coming in, he's getting spot starts here and there. And you really never know. He really never knows if this is going to be his last game, playing or not. So I thought he played a good game. I thought he played a valiant game. He went out there and he let it fly, and he gave the Jets a shot. But they are the Jets, and they'll win this for a reason. And kudos to the Patriots getting it together and putting the ball into the end zone a few times to make up a 10-point lead in that, in the second half. They're still trying to figure out their way. And honestly, I could see they're building on some things. And honestly, the Jacoby Myers thing was the thing that stood out to me most in this game. He got targeted heavily, and it really looks like they have a firm connection there.
Yeah, I want to build on Ian's point. Myers had 11 catches coming into the game. He had 12 tonight for 169 yards. Newton didn't find the end zone through the air, but he did find it twice on the ground. So he got you some rushing points that way if you've got him on your team. Ace's boy, Rex Burkhead, 12 carries, 56 yards, also found the end zone. He was bulldozing people late, lowering the shoulder going through. Yeah. And Flacco had a pretty solid game, 18 of 25 with three scores and a pick. Yeah. That said, the Jets rushing game, atrocious. Combined 18 carries for 65 yards is not going to get it done, especially when none of those 65 yards involve finding the end zone.
Yeah, and that was the tough part, losing Mekhi Becton early. He left the game early on, and they were kind of making it a point to run behind him. And, you can kind of tell they were effective at running the football early enough to where the Patriots had to respect it, and which allowed for a lot of these deep crossers, a lot of these big shots down the field that they were able to connect on, because the Patriots the Patriots aren't a great run defense. So they're bringing guys up. They're having to react to those run fakes and, getting the ball thrown over their head, which led to a good game from Joe Flacco. But you can see them, be, intentional about running the football because, the New England Patriots struggle with defending the run this year. So it was actually a very good game plan. You wish you had an explosive running back there to kind of take advantage of those opportunities. They don't have that guy. Frank Gore's not that guy, and Michael Piñeron's not that guy.
Just to echo your point, you mentioned Adam Gase maybe, coaching for, his job. That last drive by them certainly doesn't help his case, when he gets out there and he throws the ball. And then on a crucial third down, when you're thinking maybe second down, we didn't find much success, but then to go and throw the ball again, the double down on your ignorance. And it's just Adam Gase, shake my head. All right, let's get into this, man. Let's start with the QBs. You guys mentioned Cam Newton. He went 27 for 35, 227 yards. He actually ran the ball, had 10 carries, a lot of goal line action for him. Totaled 16 yards and 2 touchdowns for 16 fantasy points. I'll start with you, Kosher. How do we like Cam Newton? I know he was a drop or shot candidate in our weekly. How do you like his performance tonight?
I was impressed by it. I thought he looked very comfortable. It looks like he's really developing some rapport with Jacoby Myers. It looks like he's trying to figure out and fitting into Bill Belichick's system. And I think that this was part of the effect of the condensed training camp. Is not only is it tougher for rookies to get used to the NFL speed, but any players changing teams have to pick up on a playbook and have to learn their new teammates. And they're doing it in an unusual setting because teams can practice together and had the really abbreviated preseason this year.
Nye, you feel a little bit better about Cam Newton's prospect. You mentioned pumping the brakes on dropping Cam Newton. You mentioned his floor getting a little better going forward. How you feel about his performance tonight?
You know what? Tonight was the night. If you're a Cam Newton owner and you've kind of been riding this, the Cam Newton train this season, this was the night, to kind of gauge what you were going to get moving forward with Cam Newton. And right now, I'm not totally comfortable riding this ride with Cam Newton. He gave you a decent night. Now is the night to move up off of Cam Newton. This is the week to trade Cam Newton. I'll say a Jared Goff out there. There are plenty of quarterbacks. I like Jared Goff's schedule down the stretch, but there are plenty of quarterbacks you can go get right now that can give you a better upside than a Cam Newton right now. This is the time. Like he had a solid night tonight. He gets Baltimore next week, and those numbers after Baltimore next week aren't going to look like they did this week. They struggled, to get the ball into scoring range. He's not giving you a lot of upside in the passing. He's not throwing for passing touchdowns. You're really just relying on them to get the ball down close enough where he can put the ball in the end zone himself. It's not one of those things where you can bank on him getting a rushing TD every week, especially with the way this offense has been struggling. I'm advising, if I had Cam Newton earlier this season, I moved off of him. Move Cam Newton right now. He had a decent game. You'll be able to go out and get a quarterback that can give you a little bit more. Honestly, and on the waiver wire, you can probably go pick up, a Jake Luton who just played the other day against the Houston Texans. He might even give you some of the same kind of upside Cam Newton's going to give you. They're a myriad of quarterbacks who are going to give you better upside, better TD upside than Cam Newton right now.
Going to the other team, we had Joe Flacco. He went 18 for 25. Had a really good game, man. Silver Fox Flacco, man. 262 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did throw an interception in typical Joe Flacco fashion. He did score you about 19 fantasy points, depending on how your league is scoring. Kosher. We know the Jets have the bye the next week, so this is probably the last we're going to see Flacco this year. I'm thinking, especially with the receivers getting healthy. What do you make of Joe Flacco right now? We got to give him his roses, but obviously there's nothing in the future for him, right?
I think the big question is how seriously is Mekhi Becton hurt? Because if he's out of the lineup, the Jets don't have much of a run game, and teams are going to be able to sit back against the pass. And as good as his receivers, or as the Jets receivers are, and Brashard Perriman is good, Denzel Mims is good, Jamison Crowder is good. But if they can't protect the quarterback, it's not going to matter how good the receivers are if no one's able to get them the ball.
We won't really even mention the running backs. Frank Gore, 12 carries, 46 yards. P. Ryan, 6 carries, 19 yards. Failed to get into the end zone. I mean, those guys really aren't fantasy factors at this point. P. Ryan was a sexy pick or a waiver wire pick a couple of weeks back, but we've certainly seen his star shine just a little bit in that system. Let's focus primarily on the Patriots running backs. Probably some interesting waiver wire options in the stable. You had Damon Harris going down late with the injury. Rex Burkhead, the star tonight in the backfield with a touchdown, 12 carries, got you 15 fantasy points. I'll start with you, Nye. Who's the guy to have in this fantasy backfield now that Damon Harris is out? Even when Damon Harris is in, it seems like they run by committee anyway. So is there anybody you have faith in in this group? I guess I should reframe that question going forward.
Man, it's one of those things where we know this backfield is a running back by committee. They lose Damian Harris tonight. We don't know the extent of his, injury or, how that's going to look, moving forward into next week. But, they are going to get Sony Michel back. More than likely, he could be back next week. So this might be an instance where, Damian Harris goes down and Sony Michel kind of just steps into that Damian Harris, void. And it kind of just looks the same like it hasn't been looking for the last few weeks. But if you're going to lean on a guy, I think Rex Burkhead has been the guy to kind of be the consistent one within this offense. He's there every week. He's more than likely going to get you some of those carries near the goal line if they can get it down there. So honestly, Rex Burkhead is probably the guy you want right now. If you want one of these guys, he's one of the guys you want right now. I don't see much upside with any other guy outside of Sony Michel. It depends. I mean, if Sony Michel and Damian Harris are both healthy, then honestly, you probably don't want anybody.
We should be giving Rex Burkhead his roses. Mm-hmm. I gave him plenty of roses preseason.
You did?
Yeah. And I mean, James White too. Like, if you're a defensive player, like, how do you not know when James White comes in the game that they're going to throw a screen pass? That just seems very obvious. I mean, I might like his prospects with, Damian Harris out because, maybe they throw him 6 screen passes in their next game. And that seems to be the most successful play ran for James White in this offense.
Well, with James White, he tends to do well in these game scripts where they're either behind or, well, most of the time when they're behind. So, he's going to see a lot of the action when they're behind and they're trying to make up and they're trying to get back into a game. Let's
talk wide receivers. And the star of the show tonight, Jakobi Meyers. We'll get into his waiver wire.
Jakobi and Meyers.
Prospects.
The law firm, baby.
We'll fight for
Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis to Jakobi and Myers.
I was low-key waiting for the puns. I was waiting for the puns. Jakobi Meyers, 12 for 14, 169 yards. He certainly got a boatload of targets. In our league, he scored a 30, so he's probably right around that range in most fantasy leagues. Amir Bird, 5 for 9, 65 yards. He gave you almost 12 fantasy points. I'll start with you, Kosher. Are we buying Jakobi and Meyers going forward?
I am.
Firing him up?
Yes, I am. He's developing some good chemistry with Newton. I think he's going to be one of the primary targets in the passing game. He more than doubled his season output in catches today. He had 11 catches coming in to this game. Today he had 12, so he's now at 23. He's someone that Cam feels comfortable with, and I think that that's going to lead to good things. I think Cam is going to keep looking his way.
Jakobi Meyers looks like the best wide receiver Cam has had all year. He's doing a good job of getting open. He's working himself open. He's making tough catches. The trust is there. I mean, if it hasn't been, it wasn't evident by tonight where, I think he got 13 targets.
14
targets, excuse me. 14 targets yeah. That, it's there. And I wouldn't feel shy about playing Jakobi Meyers from here on out. He's a comfortable.
Even against the Ravens next week.
They do have the Ravens, but I still wouldn't. They're going to have to throw the ball. And honestly, if he's going to get 12 targets, he could probably haul in maybe half of those for maybe like 60, 65 yards. I wouldn't count on the touchdown production, but like I said, he's a flex guy, wide receiver 3 type guy. You can stick in your lineup. And in most, matchups, their schedule gets a little bit lighter. They get Houston. They get the Jets again. They get another team in there. But like it gets light again. So moving forward, even after the Baltimore game, he's going to have some upside, have some value. A guy who's going to give you a wide receiver type 3 output and possibly more with the amount of targets he's getting. He can vault himself into that wide receiver 2 and even borderline 1, wide receiver 1 category on some weeks, depending on how many of these targets he can haul in.
Making 90s babies rejoice, man. All right, let's swing it over to the Jets. They got their full complement of wide receivers back. That tonight was led by Brashard Perryman. He put up a 28 fantasy point outing. He went 5 for 7, 101 yards with a pair of touchdowns. The other two wide receivers in that trio, Jamison Crowder, Denzel Mims, both gave you 10 fantasy points. Crowder went 2 for 2 with 26 yards and one touchdown. And then Denzel Mims went 4 for 8 with 62 yards and one touchdown. Nye, break this group down for us now, because seemingly, I mean, a lot of these guys are probably on the waiver wire. I would guess maybe Crowder's the only surefire guy that's probably rostered in most leagues. Again, that depends on what format you're playing in. But walk us through this, man. Did we like what we saw from Rashad Perriman?
It's
tonight?
easy. It's very easy.
Because he was their big free agent pickup.
He was, and here it's very easy.
Sorry.
If Joe Flacco is playing, play Rashad Perriman. If Sam Darnold's playing, it's more of Jamison Crowder. Passing profile, Sam Darnold really likes to hit the intermediate. He feels a lot of comfort with Jamison Crowder. Jamison Crowder is going to be the guy of choice when Sam Darnold is playing. But, you know, if we get another game out of Joe Flacco, yes, Rashad Perriman is worth putting in your lineup. Much like Jacoby Myers, he's in that wide receiver 3, that flex type category. Given the rapport him and Flacco seem to be having, and the fact that Flacco does like to drive the ball down the field, gives Rashad Perriman, you know, that kind of upside that you want out of that kind of flex wide receiver 3 type guy. So I'd like Jacoby Myers better than I like Rashad Perriman, given the fact that, you know, if Sam Darnold is playing, I'm not sure what I'm going to get out of a guy like Rashad Perriman. So I wouldn't be running out to the waiver wire to go acquire a guy like Rashad Perriman, unless I knew like Joe Flacco was going to be playing the rest of the year. I think it's still Jamison Crowder. He's coming back from that groin injury, his first game tonight. He had a nice touchdown with the toe drag in the end zone right before halftime. I think it's Jamison Crowder still for the rest of the year if Sam Darnold is playing, but be on the lookout if there is a quarterback change or if Sam Darnold is going to miss extended time. Rashad Perriman does vault into, you know, that wide receiver 3 flex category. He does become a guy that's playable.
Defensively, we didn't really see too much. Both teams gave up a ton of points. Patriots had an interception and a sack. The Jets had a forced fumble, no INTs, no sacks. Not really many takeaways from the defense besides maybe the Patriots defense kind of underwhelming a little bit tonight. What do you think, Kosher?
A little bit underwhelming. I'm also looking through the stats. I see a total of 1 sack tonight between both teams, and that was Dietrich Wise Jr. So I didn't see a lot of big plays being made. And that's not going to get you a lot of points in fantasy football. You need the big points, and normally you'd assume that the Jets are good for a couple turnovers because they've struggled this year, but both teams, for the most part, took care of the ball. James White fumbled, but his teammate Shaq Mason recovered, so no one really turned the ball over. And yeah, there's not a lot to say. You had Bless Austin with a total of 12 tackles, 9 of them solo. You had Harvey Lang, both for the Jets, hitting double digits, but otherwise, not a whole lot to say, either individually or collectively, defensively for these teams.
One thing I noticed with the Patriots, at least in the last couple of weeks, they've had a hard time generating pressure on the quarterback. I mean, Joe Flacco put up 27 on these guys. Are the Patriots kind of exploitable? Like, are we targeting the Patriots going forward?
You know what?
No.
You know what? I had that same thought going tonight. Like, you know, this Patriots defense, you know, if you haven't really paid attention, you kind of get, you know, lulled into, oh, the Patriots defense, you know, they're a tough defense. But outside of when Stephon Gilmore is not playing, they're a very different defense. And you kind of couple that with, you know, them not being able to get a lot of pass rush. It really puts a lot of stress on that back end, which makes them easier to attack. So yeah, I think it's a defense. I don't know if you can target them, but I think when you look at your player schedule and they have New England on it, I don't think it's one of those situations where you're kind of like sweating. Oh, okay. You know, if you have a wide receiver and they're playing Stephon Gilmore, obviously there's going to be some trepidation there, but I wouldn't be too worried about it. I think they are gettable. It was also a good time to get a look and see how atrocious this Jets team is.
If you're looking to see that tonight, I think you might be disappointed. They actually look pretty okay.
No, they're still trophies on defense.
All right.
They're
But I
still
mean, they
bad.
look in prime time. I think we expected a lot worse.
Yeah, they're not good. I think Cam Newton owners were like, man, we're getting 30 tonight. We're getting 30 out of Cam tonight. And it was just like, no, it was tough.
Before we get out of here, let's do a little bit of pick two. A pick two from the waiver wire. It could be offense, two offense, an offense and a defense. Feel free to mix and match, fellas. Pick two. I will start with you, Nye.
All right. I'm not gonna hit on a guy that actually was, thinking about rostering before the weekend started. And it was Jake Luton. I did a lot of film on Jake Luton before these weekends games started. I didn't really have any roster room to roster him, but I was actually keeping my eye on him. He actually looked pretty well and pretty good. He did have a plus matchup against Houston. They can't turn anybody over. So it was actually a good matchup for him to kind of see what the kid could do. He went out and played well. So it's a guy to keep your eye on moving down, the line. If you have any kind of quarterback issues, or if you're looking for a spot starter, he might be one of those guys who can give you, some production in a squeeze. And other guys out there, on the waiver wire, Nick Mullins showed himself to be, I guess, decent, But yeah, my first guy.
He has his moments.
But he's also struggling behind a badly injured offensive line.
He is.
So
he is.
Kind of like what we said with the Jets. Like, if you've got a healthy O-line, it's one thing to look at the quarterback, but without that O-line in place, it's going to be really, really, it's going to be tough.
Second guy, which kind of brings me over to that San Francisco team, is basically whatever number one wide receiver they throw out there these days. So if Brandon Ayuk doesn't happen to play, just take whoever's available and they'll probably give you 30 points. Richie James had a huge night for the 49ers against the Packers, which is another targetable defense that you can probably go target down the line.
And looking at quarterbacks out east, look at Alex Smith. With Kyle Allen going down to an ankle injury, and we'll get into that tomorrow, I think it's going to be Alex Smith's backfield with Dwayne Haskins as the backup. So I think he's someone worth keeping your eye out on. He's also going to be, he's got Detroit coming up this week, and that's a favorable matchup for him. I'm looking defensively, and in our league, Corey Littleton's available. Yeah. And he's going up against Denver. I think that's going to be a plus matchup for him. He's going to give you consistent tackles. And the question is whether he can get a couple sacks, whether they can get that pass rush going out in the desert.
Those are good picks. And I thought you saw a lot of interesting options tonight. Rex Burkhead is an option. Maybe Damian Harris if he comes back from injury. We mentioned Jacoby Myers, Brashad Perryman. A lot of those guys are available in leagues. Before we wrap this up tonight,
let me hit on one more guy because he was going to be my defensive guy. His name just really fell out of my head. Trey Hendrickson, defensive end with the New Orleans Saints. He went into Sunday night's game with 5.5 sacks, which is kind of under the radar. Nobody's really been paying attention to Trey Hendrickson. He got 2 sacks against Brady on Sunday night. Probably should have vaulted himself into your consciousness. He actually played really, really well. He seems to be the guy opposite Cam Jordan that you can trust. I know Davenport was kind of, he was the first round pick, kind of thought he was going to step up and take that role. But Trey Hendrickson has taken that role, and now he's running with it. He has 7.5 sacks on the season. A guy in the second half you could probably go get right now if he's on your waiver wire. He's going to get singled up a lot of the time because Cam Jordan is going to see the majority of those double teams. So that's a guy in a defense that's playing pretty well right now who you can go get. He already has 8 sacks on the season. I don't know where he ranks in the league right now. I don't have those numbers. But 7.5 sacks at the midway point is pretty freaking good.
He's put together a string of really great games. 91, New Orleans Saints. I've had my eye on him as well. Something tells me he's not going to be on our waiver wire next week.
I don't know. He might. I wouldn't have brought him up if I was going to go after him. I just left it low.
I have my eye on him. All right, well, that's going to wrap it up. Make sure you guys keep an eye out for our Wednesday weekly show. We'll break down everything that happened in week 9. We'll talk about, the new look Buck offense. Didn't look at to a T. So we'll break down what he looked like. For myself, for Coach Killer, for Nye, that's spelled backwards, for Big Baller Brand here in spirit. We're Select Start Fantasy Football Podcast, man. Make sure you guys like, subscribe, you guys comment, you guys share. Appreciate you guys. We out.